Hello, my friend. Come, sit with me for a while. Let the noise of the world fall away, just for a moment. If you are here, I imagine it is because you feel it too. That low, constant hum beneath the surface of your days, it is not always loud, is it? Sometimes it is just a faint vibration, a tightness in the chest as you scroll through the highlight reels of other people's lives. Other times, it is a roaring in your ears, a frantic inner monologue that replays every mistake, every awkward conversation, every moment you felt you did not quite measure up. It is the sound of the courtroom that we carry inside our own minds, a courtroom that is in session 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with no holidays and no recesses. In this courtroom, you are simultaneously the prosecutor, the defendant, and, most exhaustingly, the judge. The gavel comes down 100 times a day. Guilty. Guilty of not being productive enough. Guilty of saying the wrong thing. Guilty of not being a better parent, a better child, a better friend. Guilty of feeling envy, or anger, or simply being tired. And when we grow weary of judging ourselves, we turn the gavel on others. We scroll and we swipe, passing silent sentences on strangers, on colleagues, on loved ones. We judge their choices, their appearances, their beliefs, and in that fleeting moment of judgment, we might feel a flicker of superiority, a brief respite from the harsh light of our own self-incrimination. But it is a hollow victory, isn't it? It only strengthens the bars of the cage, reinforcing the very system of judgment that keeps us imprisoned. This is the great unease of our age. We live under the constant, crushing weight of judgment, both given and received, real and imagined. It is the source of so much of our anxiety, our division, and our deep, soul-level exhaustion. We long for peace, for a quiet mind, for a moment of true, unconditional rest. But how can we find it when the trial is never over? What if I told you that the key to dismissing this courtroom, to silencing the gavel forever, has been sitting in front of us for 2,000 years? What if the path to the profound peace your soul craves is found not in a complex new philosophy or a demanding self-help regimen, but within a single teaching of Jesus, a teaching so common, so familiar, that we have almost completely forgotten its power? We have heard it so many times that we think we understand it. We have polished it into a simple, polite suggestion, a nice moral platitude to hang on a wall. But we have stripped it of its revolutionary fire. The teaching is simply this: judge not. I can almost hear your thoughts. Yes, of course, you might say. Judge not. Be kind. Don't be critical. I know that one. And you are not wrong, of course. That is the surface layer, the gentle ripple we see. But beneath that surface lies a current of liberation so powerful it can reshape the very landscape of our inner world. We have mistaken a profound spiritual directive for a simple rule of etiquette. We have treated a key that unlocks our chains as if it were a mere suggestion to be a bit nicer to one another. The command to judge not is not a call to ignore right and wrong, or to become a passive observer of life with no opinions. It is not about pretending that harm doesn't exist. It is something far deeper, far more transformative. It is an invitation to abdicate. It is an invitation to step down from a throne you were never meant to occupy, the judge's seat. In our journey together, I want to explore the staggering depth of this seemingly simple phrase. We will look at why Jesus placed this teaching at the very heart of his message about the kingdom of God. We will discover that ceasing to judge is not an act of weakness, but the ultimate act of reclaiming our own peace. It is the silencing of that inner prosecutor that tells you that you are not enough. It is the calming of the defensive heart that lives in constant fear of the opinions of others. It is the beginning of seeing yourself and every person you meet, not as a case to be won or lost, but as a soul worthy of grace. This is not about adding another rule to your life. It is about taking a burden off of your shoulders, a burden you have been carrying for so long, You may not even realize how heavy it truly is. The key to your peace is waiting. So, let us travel back. Close your eyes for a moment, if you will, and leave this room behind. Let us go back 2,000 years, not to a stone church with hard pews or a grand cathedral with echoing halls, but to a hillside sloping down towards a shimmering lake, the Sea of Galilee. The air is warm, smelling of dust and wild herbs. There is no pulpit, no microphone, only the voice of a man sitting among the people. And who are these people? They are not so different from us. They are farmers with calloused hands, fishermen who smell of salt and sun, mothers trying to quiet their children. There are devout men who know the scriptures by heart, and there are outcasts who feel they will never be good enough. There are the curious, the desperate, the hopeful, and the deeply skeptical. They have all come to hear this teacher, this rabbi from Nazareth, whose words seem to carry a different weight than those of the religious authorities in the temple. He has been speaking for some time, painting a picture of a world turned upside down, a kingdom where the poor in spirit are blessed and the meek inherit the earth. And then, he looks out at these ordinary, burdened people, and he says the words, "Me crenete," judge not. Imagine hearing that for the first time. In the culture of that day, judgment was a part of the very fabric of life. It was a world of clean and unclean, righteous and sinner, insider and outsider. The religious leaders, the Pharisees, were masters of judgment. They had built an entire system around interpreting the law, a complex scaffolding of rules designed to measure a person's worthiness before God. Judgment was how you knew where you stood. It was how you proved your own righteousness by meticulously pointing out the unrighteousness of others. Into this world, Jesus speaks these two simple words. And the original word he uses in Greek, krenete, is so much more potent than our English word, judge. We tend to think of judging as simply having an opinion or making an observation. But krino means to sever, to divide, to issue a verdict, to condemn. It is the word used for a formal sentencing in a court of law. So when Jesus says judge not, he is not saying don't have opinions or don't use discernment. He is saying stop condemning, stop issuing final sentences on the state of another person's soul. Lay down the gavel. This was not a gentle suggestion. It was a radical dismantling of their entire social and religious framework. He was telling them, and us, to step out of the role of the condemning judge, a role we were never created to fill. And then he gives the reason, which is just as misunderstood as the command itself, that you be not judged. For with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. For centuries, this has been interpreted as a threat. If you judge others, God will judge you harshly in return. But that is not what I believe Jesus meant at all. It is not a threat. It is a diagnosis. It is a timeless law of our inner universe. He is saying that the act of condemnation is a poison that you think you are giving to others, but you are really drinking yourself. When you adopt the posture of a harsh judge, your entire world becomes a courtroom. You will see condemnation everywhere you look. You will feel its weight in your own heart, because the measure you use on others, that critical, unforgiving ruler, becomes the very same one your own inner critic uses against you. If you measure the world with a ruler of harshness, you will always find yourself coming up short. You cannot find peace in a world you are constantly condemning. The very act of sentencing others sentences you to a life of anxiety, comparison, and fear. Jesus' instruction is an act of profound compassion, an invitation to set ourselves free from the heavy, impossible burden of being God. Words and ideas can shape our minds, but it is stories that truly capture our hearts. Jesus knew this better than anyone. He rarely spoke in abstract theological terms. Instead, he told stories. He pointed to a mustard seed, a lost coin, a stubborn son, and in these simple, earthy tales, he revealed the very nature of God. But sometimes, The most powerful illustration was not a parable he told, but a life he touched, a moment where his teaching was forged into action in the crucible of human conflict. There is one such story that, for me, is the living embodiment of Judge Not. It is a story of fury, shame, and a quiet, world-changing act of grace. Picture a morning in Jerusalem. The temple courts are already bustling, the air thick with the smell of sacrificial smoke and the murmur of prayers. Jesus is teaching, and a crowd has gathered, drawn by the authority and compassion in his voice. Suddenly, the peaceful scene is shattered. A group of men, scribes and Pharisees, burst through the crowd, their faces a mask of self-righteous fury. They are dragging a woman with them. Her clothes are disheveled, her hair is wild, and her face is etched with a terror so profound it is hard to look at. They throw her down in the dust in the center of the circle, before Jesus and everyone. The shame is a physical thing, a heavy cloak they have thrown over her. The lead accuser's voice rings out, sharp and triumphant. "Teacher," he says, the title dripping with condescension, "this woman was caught in the very act of adultery. In the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. So what do you say?" The air grows thick with tension. It is a trap, and a brilliant one. If Jesus says, "Stone her," he will betray his own message of mercy and compassion. If he says, "Let her go," he will be accused of defying the sacred law of Moses, a crime for which he himself could be condemned. The crowd holds its breath. The woman on the ground dares not even look up, her body braced for the first blow. The stones are already heavy in the hands of her accusers. And what does Jesus do? He does not engage in their legal debate. He does not offer a clever argument. He says nothing. Instead, he bends down and begins to write in the dust with his finger. Can you imagine the power of that silence? It is a deafening refusal to participate in their game of condemnation. The furious accusers stand there, their momentum broken, their righteous anger suddenly feeling awkward and exposed in the face of this quiet, deliberate act. What was he writing? Some have speculated he was writing their own secret sins in the dust for all to see. Perhaps. Or perhaps he was simply writing peace. Perhaps he was demonstrating that in the face of our frantic need to condemn, the first act of divine wisdom is to be still, to refuse to add our voice to the chorus of accusation. He lets the silence stretch until it becomes unbearable. Then, he slowly stands up and looks not at the woman, but directly into the eyes of the men surrounding her. He speaks, his voice calm and clear, cutting through the tension. "Let him who is without sin among you be the first to throw a stone at her." He does not condemn them. He does not call them hypocrites. He simply holds up a mirror. He turns their own weapon of judgment back on them, not as an attack, but as an invitation to self-awareness. He is not asking them to evaluate the woman's sin, but to confront their own. And then, he bends down again, and continues to write in the sand, giving them the dignity of making their choice without his gaze upon them. One by one, the stones drop from their hands. The sound is almost imperceptible at first, a soft thud in the dust. The oldest, who have had the most time to accumulate the heavy knowledge of their own failings, leave first, then the next, and the next, until only Jesus is left with the woman. The courtroom has been dismissed. The prosecutors have vanished. He stands and looks at her, perhaps for the first time, with eyes that are not filled with accusation, but with a deep and seeing love. "Woman," he asks gently, "where are they? Has no one condemned you?" She looks up, her own eyes filled with a dawning disbelief. "No one, Lord," she whispers. And then he speaks the words that hold the key to our peace. "Neither do I condemn you. Go, and from now on, sin no more." He does not ignore her sin, but he separates her from it. He offers not a verdict, but a future. He shows us that the opposite of judgment is not approval, it is grace. That powerful story is not just a historical account, it is a mirror. In it, we can see our own reflection. We are, at times, the accusers, standing with stones of judgment in our hands, ready to pass sentence on a coworker, a family member, or even a stranger on the internet whose opinion offends us. And in our more vulnerable moments, we are the woman in the dust, paralyzed by our own shame, utterly convinced of our unworthiness, bracing for the condemnation we feel we deserve. The path to peace that Jesus lays out is the same for both: to let the stones fall from our hands, and to accept that the only one qualified to judge has chosen not to condemn. But how do we do this, not just once, but day after day, in the midst of our busy, complicated lives? It begins, I have found, with small, conscious shifts in the privacy of our own hearts. The first and most difficult place to practice this is with ourselves. We are often our own harshest critics. That inner courtroom I spoke of earlier? The chief prosecutor is usually a voice that sounds suspiciously like our own. It keeps a meticulous record of every failure, every flaw, every embarrassing moment. So the first practice is this: learn to notice without condemning. When you make a mistake and that familiar voice rises up, "You idiot, how could you have done that?" Try not to fight it. Just notice it. Acknowledge its presence, as you would a passing cloud. You can say to yourself, "Ah, there is the voice of judgment." By naming it, you create a space between you and the accusation. You are no longer the defendant cowering in the dock. You are the observer. You do not have to argue with the voice or prove it wrong. You simply refuse to pick up the gavel and ratify its verdict. You let the thought pass without serving as its judge and jury. This simple act of non-engagement is profoundly liberating. It is the beginning of treating yourself with the same grace that Jesus offered the woman in the dust. The second place is in our daily interactions. We form judgments about people in a fraction of a second. The slow driver in front of us is an idiot. The cheerful person at work is annoying. The political commentator we disagree with is evil. These small, constant judgments are like tiny pebbles we add to a sack on our own back. By the end of the day, it is a heavy burden to carry. The practice here is to consciously choose curiosity over condemnation. The next time you feel that flash of irritation or judgment towards someone, pause, take a breath, and in the space that breath creates, ask a silent question: I wonder what is happening in their world right now. Instead of, that person is so rude, try, I wonder what pain might be causing them to act this way. This is not about condoning bad behavior. It is about recognizing the shared, flawed humanity in the other person. A dear friend of mine once tried this with a family member she found incredibly difficult. For years, every interaction was filled with judgment. One day, she decided that every time she felt the judgment rise, she would silently wish that person peace instead. It changed nothing about the other person, but for my friend, it changed everything. The anger and resentment that had been a poison in her own heart for years began to dissolve, replaced by a quiet compassion, and most surprisingly, a deep sense of her own inner peace. She had laid down her stones, not for their sake, but for her own. Finally, we must apply this to our fear of being judged by others. So much of our anxiety is rooted in this fear. We perform, we perfect, we pretend, all for an imaginary jury whose verdict we are constantly trying to win. The practice here is to find a different anchor for your worth. When you feel that anxiety rising before a presentation, at a social gathering, or after posting something online, take a moment, close your eyes, picture that scene in the temple court. See the stones drop to the ground. Hear the voice that matters most say, "Neither do I condemn you." Let that be the only verdict that holds sway in your heart. When you are anchored in this unconditional grace, the opinions of others begin to lose their power. You are no longer a defendant pleading for their approval. You are free. Free to be authentic. Free to be imperfect. Free to be at peace. And so, we arrive not at an end, but at a beginning. We began our time together sitting with that deep, modern disquiet, the hum of anxiety that comes from a life lived inside a courtroom of our own making. We felt the weight of the gavel, the exhaustion of being both prosecutor and defendant in a trial with no end. We named this prison, this source of our collective weariness, the tyranny of judgment. From that place of honest recognition, we traveled back across 2 millennia to a sun-drenched hillside in Galilee. There, we listened with fresh ears as Jesus spoke the revolutionary words, "Judge not." We discovered that this was not a simple suggestion to be polite, but a divine prescription for a burdened soul, a powerful invitation to lay down a weight we were never meant to carry. We saw this teaching brought to life in the dust of the temple courts. We stood in the silence as Jesus knelt and wrote, refusing to join the chorus of condemnation. We watched the stones fall from the hands of the accusers, and we felt the profound liberation in his final words to the woman, "Neither do I condemn you." This, we learned, is the heart of the matter. The opposite of judgment is not approval. It is an ocean of grace. Then, we brought this truth home into the small corners of our own lives, finding simple, tangible ways to practice this release with our own unforgiving inner critic, with the people who frustrate us, and with the deep-seated fear of what others think of us. Now, here at the threshold, is the final invitation. It is not a call to try harder, to add another demanding task to your already long list of things you should be doing. In fact, it is the very opposite. It is an invitation to stop, to cease, to lay down your arms in the silent war you have been waging in your own mind. The spiritual life is not always about striving. Often, its deepest truths are found in surrender. The invitation is to surrender the judge's seat, to abdicate the throne you have been occupying, the one that forces you to constantly measure and sentence the world, and most painfully, yourself. To do so requires a deep breath of humility, the recognition that we simply do not have enough information, enough wisdom, or enough grace to be the final arbiter of anyone's worth, including our own. The freedom in that admission is immeasurable. It is the prison guard finally realizing the keys he uses to keep others locked in have also been keeping him inside the cold, gray walls of the prison. The invitation is to simply put the keys down and walk out into the Sunday. If you feel willing, take a moment with me now. You can close your eyes or simply soften your gaze. Bring to mind one judgment you are holding right now. Perhaps it is a harsh judgment against yourself for a recent mistake, or perhaps it is a long-held resentment against someone who hurt you. Do not try to solve it or excuse it. Just see it. Acknowledge it. Feel its weight in your heart, like a stone in your hand. Notice the tension it creates in your body, the space it takes up in your mind. Now, picture yourself opening your hand. See the stone resting there. You do not have to throw it. You do not have to understand everything about it. You only have to choose to let it go. In your mind's eye, simply let it drop. Feel the lightness in your palm. Feel the tension in your shoulders ease. Feel the space that opens up in your heart where that heavy judgment used to be. In that space, there is silence. In that silence, there is peace. This is the peace that Jesus holds out to you. It is not something you have to earn or achieve. It is a gift waiting for you, every moment of every day, in the simple, courageous act of release. This is a lifelong practice, a gentle turning of the heart that we will be invited to make again and again. Be patient with yourself. There will be days you pick up the stone again without even realizing it. But the invitation is always there to let it go once more. Every moment is a new chance to dismiss the court. Every breath is a new opportunity to choose curiosity over condemnation and grace over grievance. May you walk from this place a little lighter, with hands a little more open, free from the need to measure and condemn. And may you, in that freedom, discover the profound, unshakable, and truly life-giving peace that has been waiting for you all along. Be well, my friend.